Hello my friends, and welcome to FISHTORY. I'm Alexander Williamson, and today we are going to be talking about the easiest resident to keep in all of Aquaria. This is the most versatile, most hardy creature that you can have in your aquarium. It will survive the end of the world, even beyond cockroaches. Now, what are we talking about? We're talking about isopods, and specifically freshwater isopods. They're a little creepy crawly, I must admit, but these are exactly the same kind of creatures as potato bugs, pill bugs, sow bugs, wood louse, whatever you want to call them. These are Asellus aquaticus, which are just one of over 10,000 species of isopods in the world, and there are over 500 freshwater species. This one happens to be the most diverse and have the largest habitat of any of them. It's found all across North America, Central America, Europe, the Middle East, Northern Asia, British Isles, even Iceland. And it is a very versatile creature that can survive all the way up to around 90 degrees or 35 degrees Celsius water, or survive all the way down to freezing. Pretty amazing. Also, they're used as a food source for fish. They're very similar to scuds in size and nutrition for your fish, in that they are very high in protein and they are full of great nutrients and color-enhancing chemicals. But they will not eat live plants, nor will they eat live shrimp nor baby shrimp. So they are a totally peaceful version of the scud, and they actually have been found in recent research to eat the fungus, the mold, and the bacteria that grows on fish eggs, thus increasing the total fertility and the total hatch rate of fish eggs. So they're going to start utilizing these in aquaculture. They're absolutely incredible. So if you want to know where you can get the quote-unquote right kind of isopods and what you need to do to take care of them in your aquarium, stay tuned because we're covering it all. All right, before we talk about how to take care of these in the aquarium, I want to share some incredible information about these little creatures with y'all. So you can see right now, they are very cold. They are in a jar that is about 3 degrees Celsius over freezing, maybe about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And they're getting cold in this little jar, and so they're starting to stack up on top of each other and all get together. Now I have a jar that's been out here already for about an hour that we already caught them from the pond, and they're in the jar, and you can see that they're huddling for warmth, and they actually flex their little legs and their antennae and all their moving parts, open, close, and they hang out with some of them at the center moving the most, and the ones on the outside taking a break. But the ones at the center then move their way towards the outside, and the ones that were on the outside become the center ones. So they all take turns staying warm. Now this is what they do if they don't have substrate. These are incredibly adaptable little creatures. If it's a warm aquarium, they don't need to do this. But I just wanted to show you a little bit of their natural behavior that you would see in most of their natural range. Now these showed up in my tubs, which are nothing fancy as you can see. So all these are tubs with biofilm and algae and creatures living in them for the last 3 years. So basically whatever showed up here. I didn't need to put anything in here. They all just turned up on their own over the last 3 years. And here you can see they're hanging out fairly close together because it's cold, but you can see all the way down the wall of the bucket there are these isopods, and they are grazing on algae and biofilm, as well as things like the waste that the snail right there is producing. If there's fish in the water, they'll eat the fish waste. If there's shrimp in the water, they'll break down the shrimp waste. So they've been around 300 million years and have kind of specialized in eating the leftovers. They eat the junk of the world, meaning they will clean your aquarium incredibly. They will eat through that mulm in your aquarium. They can tolerate high levels of ammonia and other pollutants, be them natural like nitrates and phosphates, or they can withstand hydrocarbons, heavy metals, and other pollutants like microplastics that other creatures can't. And in fact, recently they have done a study And they've realized that scuds or Gomeris pullix and these Asellus aquaticus live together very often. And these guys can tolerate just about anything, be it temperature or water quality. And yet these scuds need very clean water. So if the scuds start disappearing and these guys are still there, they will then take these guys, sample them, and they can put them in a machine. Sorry guys, they have to sacrifice one for the ecological team, I suppose. But then they will look at what is in these guys from a atomical and molecular standpoint, and they can tell everything about the pollution in that water. And they've been doing that lately and kind of using the scuds in conjunction with the water louses as a way to tell without doing the expensive test first. So if they're both present, it's probably very safe, clean water. Now these little guys, they tend to like stagnant water, and they can live in actual sewage runoff. They are very hardy, as I mentioned. They can also live in very clean water, and that's fine. The only thing they need is a bit of oxygen. So if it freezes over completely, they can die from asphyxiation when the water loses its oxygen, but they won't actually die from being frozen. It'll be because they can't get any more oxygen from the water. Now, these ones in particular have been studied tons. These Asellus aquaticus, these guys, there's nothing toxic about them, so you can feed them to your fish. They're not going to bite or anything like that. They're not harmful to humans in any way. And like I said, they don't like eating plants. They will munch on live plants if it's their last resort, but they are way more likely to start eating algae or biofilms before they actually do that. Apparently, they're about 50 to 55% protein by dry weight. If you dried these things out and gave them to your fish as a snack, they would be absolutely delicious. But it's a better thing to do to feed them live to your fish, because you're going to get that motion. They swim, they move around, they twitch, and that's really going to get your fish moving. It's going to get your fish instincts going, and they'll probably actually start coloring up brighter as well, because these guys do have omega-3s and 6s and all sorts of fats and proteins that your fish need to function and feel well. And they're used to eating these things all around the world. All sorts of different fish eat these things. Unfortunately, they're kind of the scapegoat of the entire aquatic world. For the last 300 million years, they are the bottom of the food chain, just right above plankton or algae. And while they will eat algae and plankton to some degree, they like to eat the dead stuff and the actual waste or excrement from other creatures, because, hey, somebody's got to do it. And it's these guys. Now, what do you need to know if you want to keep these guys alive and breed lots of them? I breed Daphnia, I breed Cyclops, I breed Scuds, and I breed them inside. But it's been a while since I bred these isopods inside. I want to show you, though, how many are out, even in cold weather when it's winter like this. These things are so tough and adaptive. Watch, we're just going to scrape the sidewall with a turkey baster, and look at this. There are some that are almost, 3/4 of an inch long in here. And they come in different colors, different sizes and shapes. There's a big male right there. The males are bigger than the females, and the males have longer legs, 2 longer legs. Of the 7 pairs of legs, 2 are longer so that they can hold on to the female for mating reasons. And they also have longer antennae and longer back little feelers. So let's add these to our little jar, and I'll tell you what you need to do in the aquarium to keep these guys healthy and happy. So they're going to reproduce most actively around somewhere between 26 and 28 Celsius, 74 to 82 Fahrenheit, kind of a broad range, but that's where you're going to get anywhere between 30 and 50 babies from each one every 3 or 4 months. And so you may realize that they're not really that quick growing. That's not a ton of babies, but you definitely want to raise them in a separate container than where your fish are. If you're trying to raise them in the container with the fish, unless you have a ton of hiding spots and mulm, most of them will get cleared out, and you may even lose the ability for them to reproduce. There may not even be enough to keep breeding, and they may actually die off. The colony may die off. So one cool thing is you can see here there's red ones, there's brown ones, there's some that have a slight green texture, there's some that are yellowy or clear, and they can change color somewhat due to their diet, and they will match their environment. So whatever mulm they're eating and whatever plants that are dead and decaying, or whatever fish waste they're eating, they will start actually camouflaging and looking like that. Now, because they're isopods, that means that they are crustaceans, just like lobsters or crabs. And in your aquarium, they don't like really acidic water because it eats through their exoskeleton. So you're going to want to keep the pH above 6. Now, that is pretty broad in that they can survive anywhere between 6 and 9 pH, no problem. And there are species or subspecies of these guys that can survive in more extreme places. But as a general rule, if you have Asellus aquaticus, or the most common water louse, you want to keep it right at the normal aquarium temperatures, and you want to have a bubbler for maximum oxygenation because they absorb oxygen through their thorax and their body cavities. It helps them breathe easier if there's, oxygen in the water. That being said, they can live in pretty stagnant, low oxygen situations due to how they've evolved. Anyways, the males are larger than the females, as I mentioned. They have those holding arms that are longer, and the females are smaller. The females tend to not have the long antennas on the head or the back. They still have 7 legs on either side, but they also have a pouch called a marsupium underneath their belly, and that's where they grow out the eggs. And the eggs will grow out for a couple months in their belly and then hatch, kind of like a shrimp, but it actually takes a little longer. Their whole lifetime is somewhere between 1 and 3 years, depending on how cold it is and how much food they have, as well as how many times they've had babies. Some of them will only have babies one time, and they'll take a whole year to fully mature. But most of these guys, if you keep them at an aquarium temperature, they will have babies 2 or 3 times. They'll mature in 3 or 4 months, and they'll have a small brood, and then another 3 or 4 months after that, they'll get bigger to around this size, and they'll have a bigger brood of, say, 20 to 40 babies, and then they'll shed in between this very frequently, every month or every 3 weeks or so. And just like any crustacean, they're going to lose that exoskeleton. So they do need some KH and GH or minerality in the aquarium. Once they have their babies will look like tiny little versions of their mom. So they will be little baby isopods running around the tank. And some people think that these are cute and they want to just keep them on their own and they want to selectively breed them. And that's fine. You only need around 2.5 gallons. Oh, here, as a 2.5 gallon tank. This is all you would need to get it started. And you would just want to put some leaf litter, a few rocks, maybe some aqua soil, or even gravel's fine, in the aquarium, an air stone and a heater, or put them in a room like that you live in, and that's plenty warm as well. They don't really need to be tropical to be at peak performance. They will still have babies that grow at peak speed in the 65 degree range or the 75 degree range. It doesn't really, they're not that sensitive. So once you have all these babies being born, they're going to hang out and kind of hide down low in the substrate. So what are we going to feed them? Well, these creatures have survived 300 million years, so they can eat just about anything. You can put them in an actual aquarium if you really want to, and they will survive in the mulm hiding just like planaria or scuds can do. But these are not predatory, at least this species. This Asellus aquaticus is not predatory. Like I said, they're going to go for algae and or dead plants because they're mushy and they don't have the proper enzymes in their body to break down complex foods that are really, stuck together with cell walls and stuff. Now, they can live with your shrimp just fine. In fact, they will actually eat algae, and while they may not eat algae off the walls of your aquarium or clean your tank completely clean, they are a great part of a cleanup crew if a few can hide out and survive not being eaten by fish. Depending on the size of your fish, this may be possible. So small endlers, small nanofish, some of them won't be able to eat the adult isopods. And we're getting foggy in here. But if you look at the size of the adult isopod and the size of the mouth of the fish, you can tell they're too big for some of the fish. So you can actually have them populating a tank with fish in there, and they're not going to hunt down or harm your shrimp or fish. Scuds, on the other hand, will sometimes hunt down your fry or very tiny fish and do damage to your plants. These guys, on the other hand, unless they go into a mode similar to locusts, where grasshoppers swarm and you literally have just thousands of them in your aquarium, they won't be desperate enough to try eating living plants usually. They'll be on living plants and they're actually cleaning them rather than eating them. So sometimes they've gotten a bad rap in the past, but scientists have studied this carefully and they are A-okay with plants. All right, my friends, so as we said, there are two strategies for raising these things. You can have them in a tank of their own that is designed for detrivores, like these scud tanks and infusoria tanks. Look at all the scuds in this tank right now, even on the front glass. And hey, you guys remember my red scud project? Well, I'm still saving the red scuds and putting them aside. We'll see what happens. But back to talking about isopods. They can live in the tank with the scud and the infusoria and your single cell life forms in the water. They can eat the single cell life forms, and they can eat paramecium, which are those little rod or kind of ovally slipper shaped organisms floating in the water. So be aware, they will eat that, but it probably won't be a problem. They probably won't eat enough of it that you can't still harvest it and feed your fish. But if you put them directly in the fish tank and hope they're going to survive, you better give them a lot of good hiding spots. And you better not just give them sand or a bottom with gravel or sand like this. You're going to want to give them a very rich mulmy bottom that's somewhat thick. And you're going to want to allow, that way, the babies to escape predation. And either have fish that are so small, like I said, that they can't eat the adults and the adults can continue to have babies, or you're going to want to keep them completely in a separate tank and just feed whatever size of them, be that adult or small ones, that you want to feed to your fish. And when it's time to feed, simply get a turkey baster of them and squirt it out into the water, and literally they will smack them all before you will know what to do. So this is what I was saying. They're already pretty much eaten. All 20 plus of them. And the ones that weren't, that are trying to escape off to the side somewhere, are kind of getting eaten by other creatures. So this tank was probably a poor choice of allowing any to escape and survive. However, over here, this would be a great example of a tank where you might be able to raise them in the tank, in the Sluiswasser tank, in the mulm, and some would survive enough to always be a food source there for your fish. Make sure that you're breaking off plant material and or throwing in some food scraps or actual even just fish food, and just let it kind of sit and break up and decay in your aquarium. And the single cell organisms and paramecium and things that will form, like this milky kind of stuff here with the little dots, that is all microscopic life that they will also eat. So that's about all you need to know about these things. They're pretty easy. You can get a hold of them several places online, or if you live in North America or Europe or Northern Asia, most of China, a lot of Japan, you can just go outside to freshwater, stagnant areas and start, putting a net out and seeing if you find them. They are quite the fascinating little creature. And while some people like keeping them all on their own and think that they're worthy of that, just like trips or things like sea monkeys, I prefer to use them as a fish food. And I haven't really come across a predatory fish that doesn't like eating them. So they must taste pretty darn good, very similar to Daphnia. However, last warning, don't feed them to things like chili rasboras if they're very tiny, because they can get the exoskeleton stuck in their mouth, and that's no fun. You don't want them to have to deal with that. All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching today's episode on Freshwater Isopods. I hope you all have a great day. If you have any questions or comments, if you're keeping these and you've got advice or tips, please let me know. I'm actually going to use these guys to clean up the mulm in this tank somewhat, and the fish will eat them as they do so. So I'm actually going to go outside and catch like 150, put them in here, and hopefully they'll do a little bit of damage on this mulm before the fish eat them all. I'll let you know how that turns out later. Thank you so much for liking, subscribing, and being a part of this community. I'll see you guys next time on FISHTORY. Take care, you guys.